Да, добрый вечер, уважаемые коллеги. Мы вот в таких условиях гибридных, которые как-то уже стали всем нам привычны, начинаем такую зимнюю практически уже сессию нашего научного семинара в конце ноября, но уже зима по полной программе. И сегодня наша коллега Дорота Байковска, польский археолог из Ягеллонского университета в Кракове, наша давняя знакомая, да, много раз уже приезжавшая к нам в Москву и на конференции, посвященной майя, которая много лет уже работает в польском археологическом проекте в Накуме под руководством тоже нашего давнего друга и коллеги профессора Ярослава Жралки. Она представит доклад, посвященный польскому археологическому проекту в Накуме и обзору общему, и самым интересным результатам. Это доклад, который подготовлен совместно с как раз профессором Ярославом Жралкой, но поскольку в настоящий момент Дорота в Москве, она проходит стажировку в Московском государственном университете на историческом факультете, вот мы очень рады ее видеть вживую, и она нам представит свой доклад и, соответственно, ответит на все наши вопросы. И доклад будет по-английски, поэтому будет запись, поэтому мы с вами, я думаю, если какие-то вопросы еще возникнут, всегда сможем к нему вернуться. Мы будем вывешивать эти записи на открытом YouTube-канале нашего центра, и ссылки тогда тоже все вам пришлем, тем, кто у нас заинтересуется. Ну что же, тогда начнем доклад. Dora, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. So yes, my name is Dorota Bojkowska. We are waiting for technical issue. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me? Probably yes. Okay. Thank you, Sergey. So yes, I'm a PhD candidate at the Jagiellonian University in the Institute of Archaeology and also member of Nakum Archaeological project since 2015. And co-author of this presentation, Jarosław Żrałka, is the head of the project, but unfortunately he couldn't join us. But we would like, both of you, we would like to thank Dimitri for invitation to have that lecture today here. Yes, so during my talk, I try to present the most interesting and important discoveries which were made during the Nakum Archaeological project, which also, it's okay. I think for me, it's even better. Yes, for me, it's better. Thanks. So those discoveries also marks specific points in the history of Nakum. So Nakum is quite an important Maya site located in the northeastern Peten in Guatemala. It's located on the Holmu River, which is visible here, and also here. So this dark orange area is the so-called Triangle Park because of these three sites, Yasha, Nakum, and Naranjo, which create a triangle, but also it's called just National Park of Yasha, Nakum, Naranjo. So Nakum is in the straight line located 7 kilometers north from of Yasha, more or less 15 kilometers from Naranjo, and also something about 25 kilometers from Tikal, which is somewhere there. But road Nakum leads from Yasha through the Bajo La Justa, so it's better to leave the site before the rainy season. Because Bajo turning that time into a swamp, which is hard to cross. So there were a couple of seasons which with some difficulties to leave the site. And especially in 2008, when rainy season was very serious. So that was area near the Holmul River. That's why the water was very high level. But let's start from the beginning. Nakum was officially discovered in 1905, so at the beginning of the 20th century. It was discovered by Maurice de Perigny, and in that time there were no comprehensive research, only photographic documentation, some maps were made, and also general descriptions of some buildings were made. And Perigny was first who called the buildings as ruins of Nakum. So it's also worth mentioning that it was Nakum, not Nakum, as we can see here. So the current version of the name, as you can see here, it was given by Alfred Totzer from Peabody Museum, who visited and investigated the site after Perigny. And also he made those pictures here. And after Totzer, Raymond Merwin and Sylvanus Morley visited the site. Then the city was forgotten for a while, and in 1970s, Nicholas Helmuth visited twice Nakum, but it was only in 1994 that Nakum was subjected to intensive investigation by the Triangular Project of the Guatemalan Institute of Anthropology and History, so by the IDAEH. And as a result of this research, the epicenter and also periphery of the site have been studied in detail, and many structures were excavated and subsequently restored. So thanks to that project, we have the current view of Nakum. And in 2006, thanks to the permission granted from Guatemalan IDAEH, a new project known as Nakum Archaeological Project was started under the direction of Jarosław Zirałka, who ran the project together with Wiesław Koszkul. So here you can see a couple of photos of our camp. However, it was a first settlement, and now it looks probably a little bit different, especially that we had a break for 5 years from that, from the entering the Nakum. So probably it looks different now. I'm curious. I hope next season we will check this and we will tell you how it looks. So moving to the original Nakum settlement, it was first inhabited during the middle pre-classic period. So maybe even starting from 100 BC. The first versions of several important complexes and buildings come from this time. Then during the late pre-classic period, the significant development had place when all structures were rebuilt and also new structures were added. But during the early classic, architectural activity clearly diminishes in Nakum. Only a couple of buildings dated to that period have been discovered so far, and many structures visible today at Nakum were constructed in the late and terminal classic period. The core of Nakum is divided into two main sectors, north and south. And these sectors are connected with the elevated road called Perigny Causeway. And I start from the northern sector, which consists of a large spacious plaza and several complexes as a north group, east group with Pyramid X, also west group. And here in the southwest corner of the plaza, one of the oldest structure was discovered during the excavation of Nakum Archaeological Project. First idea was that maybe it was a kind of shrine, because here on that place, carbon remains were found. But after some analyzing and searching the analogy, it turned out that it's temazcal, so the steam bath. This steam bath was carved in the bedrock, and according to radiocarbon samples, it's dated from 8th to 6th century BC. However, the pottery fragments indicate that may have been used even in 10th, 9th century BC, of course. And so this construction is not only one of the oldest structures at Nakum, but also one of the oldest known such a well-preserved steam bath in the whole Maya area. On this slide, you can see documentation of that construction, drawings made by Piotrek Kołodziejczyk, and 3D scan made by Bolesław Zych. So as you can see, drainage canal was attached to the steam bath to remove water. So actually this canal was also a main hint that it wasn't a shrine, it was a temazcal. So it was directed to the south, more or less 6 meters, and then it turned to the southwest. So water was probably discharged to the nearby depression. And here you can see the reconstruction of that steam bath, which could be covered with some perishable materials. Or maybe at the beginning, it was a full artificial cave made in the bedrock, which was cut down at a later time, for example, and when the Maya were leveling the square. And then maybe they constructed some additional elements to cover it together with this perishable roof. But the temazcal was used until the late pre-classic period, more or less, until the turn of the eras, when it was completely buried and filled up with some rubble together with some ceramic sherds, and that's why we could date it at the moment. So let's move to the southern sector, the largest and most impressive part of the site. There were not only the tallest buildings, pyramids, but also most of the stone monuments like stelae or altars come from that area. And on the slide, you can see the Acropolis Complex, which consists of a large platform together with more or less 60 structures. Most of them are residential and administrative constructions. And probably during the late and terminal classic period, royal dynasty lived here in the center of Acropolis. And the largest courtyard of this complex is Patio 1. And this is the view from the east side to this patio, and we can see Pyramid E. And this is the view from the Pyramid E. So we can see Pyramid 15 and 14. And during the first season of the excavation, the excavation were conducted in this north and east corner. So Wiesław Koszkul wanted to check if this patio was sunken patio, kind of patios we know from Teotihuacan. So, and also because of the previous excavation made by IDAEC project, we knew that Wiesiek knew that in this patio we have structures with talud-i-tablero style. So he wanted to check if we can get more information about contacts with Teotihuacan, and also if this patio was sunken. So here we have the corner between structure 15 and structure D. And talud-i-tablero was discovered in the both structures, and also it confirmed that the patio was sunken and enclosed during the early classic period. Here we have excavation in another corner, so in southeastern corner. And in general, the investigations which were carried out during several seasons between 2006 and 2012, the eastern part of the patio 1 and its corners indicated that before Teotihuacan contact, there were only separated buildings, and only after the appearance of the Teotihuacan forces in the Maya area, they decided to enclose the patio, creating a sunken space. And here you can see example of talud-i-tablero style, which comes from Teotihuacan, and the same profile is visible in form G. So we can see a straight wall, tablero, and also diagonal wall talud. And what is more, excavations within the structure G, to the south of patio 1, these excavations provided numerous artifacts of Teotihuacan affiliation, including fragments of tripod cylinder bases with slab feet, and their lids, and also floreros. Unfortunately, those ceramics are not very well preserved, but the fragments show that the forms were the same as in the Teotihuacan, as you can see here. And also very distinctive projectile points made from green obsidian were found there. Green obsidian can only come from central Mexico, from the Pachuca volcano. So that's why it's another very strong evidence for the contacts with Teotihuacan. And one more thing which came out quite recently, because it was 1 year ago, when we got results of oxygen isotopes analysis. And it was the analysis of the tooth of young person, which was recovered from the fill of the platform G. Actually, it was only one tooth without any bones, but it was in this structure. And the value was in the range of central Mexico, most probably, because we know that this range, this low range of oxygen isotopes also fits to other area like Pacific coast, like western South Mexico, and also Guatemalan highlands. But anyway, we could see enough Teotihuacan traces also here to think that maybe it was central Mexico. But interesting thing is that our physical anthropologist, Asta Rand, claimed that since the enamel of the teeth forms in the uterus, so in womb of the pregnant woman, the non-local value can reflect migration of this individual's mother to Peten, not that person. So not the owner of this tooth, but her mother. And radiocarbon samples from the core of this construction indicated that the whole complex most probably post-dated the entrada. But also what is worth mentioning here is that it was not necessarily direct contact of Nakum people with the Teotihuacanos, but maybe these cultural influences have been provided by Tikal lords. So maybe during that time when Nakum was subordinated to Tikal. Okay, so let's move on. However, we are staying at the same patio, focusing on structures 15 and 14. On this slide, you can see visualization of one phase of structures 14 and 15 from the early classic period, because at that time, the platform from structure 14 was extended to the west, and a red building was erected. And later, this building was surrounded from the northwest and west by more or less 3 meters high wall, and that wall contained a very sophisticated gutter in its upper part. The gutter was formed of U-shaped stone blocks situated directly on this wall, so we can see it on the drawing and also on the photos. And small break for the PowerPoint. Yes. So the gutter starts somewhere here on the second terrace of structure 15. It goes more or less 6 meters to the west, then 6 meters to the south. And here we can see a small opening in this wall. So water passed through it. Yeah, and here, so water passed through it outside, and next it descends through this masonry element to the level of the platform. Then the gutter continues to the south and disappeared below the structure 13. And we know that this gutter continues towards the platform of the central Acropolis, so this huge construction here. But unfortunately, we don't know where the end of this drain is. So maybe its exit is located above the western Aguada, which is here, or maybe it goes to the south and put water directly to the Holmo River, which flows somewhere there. And this trapezoidal masonry element is very interesting solution because it's really unusual discovery from the Maya lowland. So it was almost 3 meters high, and it was covered with stucco and also painted red. And Nikolai Grube proposed that it might have been a replica of a sacred mountain. Mountains played a very important role in the Maya belief system, and in general, the sacred mountain was a source of water and also food. And also it was connected with the realm of ancestors or deities. So Jarek Źrałka and Wiesław Koszkul claimed that this drain system could play practical, but more even a ritual role, because during the rainy season, everything was in the water. So actually such a small gutter rather wouldn't prevent the flood in those structures. And also the small opening wouldn't work when there was a heavy rain. So the Maya could have created more efficient way of draining rainwater. And yeah, but maybe, of course, it could work during the less serious rain, maybe at the beginning of rainy season. Why not? But during the rain season, like when the rain is very serious, it's rather doubtful. So that's why we think that above all, this gutter had rather ritual or mythical purpose or aesthetical, because this opening is covered by this element. This element is higher than this opening. So from the patio, probably it looked as water was flowing like somewhere here. So maybe it looked like water was flowing out of the mountain, which undoubtedly referred to the Maya mythology. Anyway, the gutter was used for some time, and at the beginning of the late classic period was partially destroyed and covered by another structures. and then by one more, which you can see here on this reconstruction. So in general, in the late classic period, so between 600 and 800 AD, the site of Nakum is developing. And even though there are no dedicated stelae at that time, we have examples of the rich burials, which probably belong to the local rulers. And on this drawing, you can see the cross section of structure 15. So it's like here, it's from west to east. And on the top, you can see chamber with the burial, which is number 1, because it was the first burial found during the Nakum archaeological project. This burial is dated to 700 AD, and it contained nearly 500 jade and shell artifacts, mostly beads. There were 2 pairs of jade ornaments and jade pectoral, which you can see here. And it's one of the most significant finds, which was found during the first year. So it had to be very amazing experience for Jarek and Wiesiek. And because this pectoral is very important, because only a few such artifacts have been discovered in the world. So the stone was probably worked in the Olmec times. So regarding the shape, it's so-called clamshell effigy pectoral pendant, and it could come from Olman area, so from the Gulf of Mexico, and we can date it even between 13th and 11th century BC. However, the inscription and iconography pointed more into early classic period. And according to inscription, it was a jewel of Yasha ruler. And his name was Ishim Chan. We don't know what was the relation between Nakum and Yasha during the early classic period, but as I said, the burial is dated to 700 AD. So it was deposited a few hundreds of years later than the inscription was made. So this pectoral had to be a kind of heirloom, which was passing from one generation to another. And eventually it was deposited in Nakum. And here we can see vessels from that grave. One beautiful painted vessel with the representation of the dancing maize god. Yes, like 42 centimeters in diameter. Yeah, so rather big vessel. And it shows dancing maize god. So maize god symbolically refers to death and his journey through the underworld and the final rebirth. So perhaps that's why rulers put his image into the burials. Let's move on to the northern sector. In eastern group, the Temple X, another rich burial was discovered. It was burial 8, and it mainly contained a beautiful ceramic vessels. 11 vessels were placed on the both sides of the individual, and ceramically, the tomb can be dated to the transition between early and late classic period, because we have both forms typical for the early classic and as well as vessels which are typical for TPU1, so the beginning of the late classic period. So after the exploration, the process of conservation and documentation starts. So those rich burials show that in the late classic period in Nakum, there were elites. But due to the lack of carved monuments, it seems that they have played a rather subordinated role. So they were controlled by the larger centers. Here you can see the most dominant sites in the late classic period. That period was dominated by wars between cities, and at that time, as Simon Martin and Nikolai Grube pointed out, there were two superpowers. So Tikal and Takmul, or previously Dzibanche, which subordinated the smaller cities. So probably it was the same situation with Nakum. However, the situation changes at the end of the classic period. So during the terminal classic, at the beginning of 9th century, superpowers were collapsing and architectural activities stopped in the large centers, and some cities were abandoned, but not Nakum. Because archaeological investigations undertaken in Acropolis Complex during the last 10 years show that all structures erected in the previous periods were rebuilt and rebuilt during the terminal classic. And here the red rectangles stand for buildings that were constructed in previous periods, but then were rebuilt in late classic and terminal classic period. And blue ones, blue rectangles stand for buildings only from terminal classic. So in this example, you can clearly see how high was the architectural development during that period. So there were 3 times more residential architecture in terminal classic than it was in late classic. And traces of terminal classic occupation and construction activity come not only from southern sector, but also from northern sector. And here is a view of southern sector with Acropolis, and here is a pyramid C together with Stilla C. So it was located here. And here we have photo of Stilla C or 1, because we have new nomenclature of Stilli now in Nakum. And that photo is made by so at the beginning of 20th century, and this is the pyramid which looks like that now. And this stela is very important because probably the emblem glyph of the Nakum was written there. So emblem glyphs were initially reserved only for the largest cities, but over the time it was also used by the rulers of smaller cities. And this stela was dedicated in May in 815, and describes a ritual performed by a local ruler. The ritual is called chok chach. So it's the scattering ritual, which may have symbolized the act of sowing maize seed. And this ritual was performed at the period endings at the end of 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. And we can see here the same situation. So we have a time period of 5 years. And this ritual was performed by the ruler, maybe Yashmun Chak, and or something like this. And then we have the emblem glyph of Nakum, probably. So here we would have high-ranking title of the divine Lord of Nakum. And last part is the title Nachochan Winik, so the person of Nachochan. Nachochan is a toponym of for a supernatural place. Next, stela 2. The fragments of the stela were discovered at the beginning of 20th century However, also during the work of Nakum Archaeological Project, additional fragments were discovered. And here we have a drawing made by Christoph Helmke, and text describes another ritual, which is kaltun, so presenting of the stone. And this time is the end of Katun, so we can date it for 849. And ruler's name here, it's not fully understood, but characteristic feature of the terminal classic period is that the name is written with syllabograms. And after that, we can see Elkin Kalomte or Lakkin Kalomte, which may refer to Eastern Kalomte. So it may refer to the domination of the eastern part of Maya lowlands. Stela 5 before the excavation in 2012, you can see that it was all covered with moss. And in 2013, there was a process of conservation and consolidation of that stela. And here we have the final effect of the work. Unfortunately, the text is very eroded. The date can be 4 Ahau and 8 Pop, so it would be 840. And basing on remaining outlines, Christoph Helmke proposed that the verb is aktach, so the dancing event, and also that the next visible blocks here will be a retrospective date, so 9 Ahau and 18 Mo. However, recently, Sergei pointed out that maybe this, together with Dmitry Belyaev, pointed out that this verb, maybe it's not aktach, but just ukaltun, so just the presenting the stone. And also during the workshop in Bratislava in 2011, Dmitry proposed that this glyph here, maybe it's not a date, but maybe this is a part of the name of the ruler Olom, who is known from that time. So this stela is important also because probably it represents the sharing of power during the terminal classic. So we would have here king on the right side and also a nobleman on the left side. So it can be evidence of waning of royal power and kind of decentralization. And also this stela provides another information because it was probably intentionally destroyed. The faces were cut, and the same situation was with stela number 3, which is here on the right side. And we can see here, or rather we cannot see here faces because it was intentionally cut. And moreover, the base began to be undercut. So someone definitely wanted to destroy those stelae. And such behavior can be interpreted as an invasion from other centers, or another interpretation is that maybe it was a kind of rebellion within the center. Anyway, there was a political instability at that time and there were fights. And at the end, we move to the north group, which consists of huge platform, supports long building structure W together with almost plain on the top platform, structure 99. And after first limited investigations in North group, scholars suggested that this group and also other parts of the northern sector were in large part abandoned in the Terminal Classic. However, the investigations conducted in this group by our project have provided evidences of Terminal Classic occupation. So here I wanted only to point out that the floor in the northern and northwestern part of this structure was covered by many, many fragments of broken ceramic vessels, fragments of manos, fragments of figurines, and also fragments of axes, and also complete artifacts of axes. And what is more, human skeleton may have been left there unburied. So probably this person was just left there maybe after some fights. And this might represent a place left by the last inhabitants of Nakum. So to sum up, Nakum occupation lasted nearly 2000 years, and not only in southern sector, but also in the northern sector. And although in classic period and late classic period, Nakum was under control of bigger cities, for instance, Naranjo or Tikal, during the end of this period in Terminal Classic, the growth and prosperity of Nakum stand in the contrast of the other Maya sites from Peten. So we can say that Nakum survived so-called collapse. And maybe it could be connected with its role as a fluvial port that controlled commercial activities within this region. But anyway, after more or less 100 years, Nakum also was abandoned and shared the fate of other sites. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dora. Very interesting and a lot of new information even for us.
I'm glad.
Yes. Yes. Если у кого-то из наших слушателей онлайн есть вопросы, да, пока вот мы только пишем благодарность вот Ивана Савченко, thanks a lot. Вот. Какие-то вопросы или комментарии, то да, с большим удовольствием, я думаю, наша докладчица их выслушает и ответит. Да, у вас живую, да, Женя.
Okay. I have a really small question about Barrel 8. On one of plate was depicted some animal. What is this?
Yeah, we would like to know what is this.
So some feline or...
Exactly, yes. It's some feline animal, but actually we don't know what.
Yeah.
So we don't know exactly, but yes, it's just called feline animal. Yeah, but
it's laughing.
Yeah, it's very
friendly.
Friendly kitty.
Really nice.
So is it common, these zoomorph motifs for Nakum ceramics?
No, rather not. Like this kind of animal, I think this is the only one example. But animal, we had one actually above this burial. There was a deposit and there was a tablet, which was crushed totally, and that lid had I think yeah, it was like 100%. There was a jaguar on that lid. So unfortunately we didn't find the whole jaguar, but it was like this lid was formed that way that probably the handle of the slit was in the form of the jaguar. So it was more sculptured, or I don't know how to say it, but yeah, it wasn't like a flat lid with the painting, but also it was modeled in the form of the jaguar. And it was from the early classic. And that one is from the beginning of the late classic. The form is early classic, but the iconography is late classic already. So this is this transition.
Thank you. Thanks. Ivan Savchenko comments that this is a Friday codex. Yes, Friday cat. How it would be Polish cat? Cat? Кот? So Friday кот. Да. Еще у кого-нибудь вопросы или комментарии присутствующих? Сергей Викторович?
I already asked everything on Tuesday.
Yeah, so maybe answering also to your comment from Tuesday. So actually, we have planned to publish all still online. So we are working on our site and it will be linked because every still is scanned. So yes, it will be online.
Cool. That was my question. My question was, can you give it to me right now?
No.
So you answered that question already.
Thanks.
Other questions or comments? But can you go back to the image of Stela C or Stela 1? Oh, well, like going to the name, I guess that both drawing and photo probably is more, when I look at this, I'm more inclined to think that this is probably not Chuck and something, but rather your part. Yes, another.
He has his hand with the
yes. Another rain and cloud and dating. Yes. So like this strange thing, which was thought by Christoph to be something which goes after Chuck, in fact is a hand, and you can see that this is a hand. Yes. And a stone in the hand. So it's a good representation, I guess, of your past, quite good. And even on the drawing, you can see this. It's slightly withdrawn, but I think that that was a stone and that was a hand of this. So the meaning would be the same, yes. Some yash moon, yes, whatever moon means.
new moon.
New moon, yes. Or probably your part is the first sun, because moon means son, yes, young person, or slave. I don't think slave would go here. Yes.
Yeah, after the kind of hiatus, they named the slave.
Yes. So I think that your part would go better, and with this we could find some maybe references to this guy in ceramics, some looting ceramics here from private collections.
Your parts we have on the one ceramic name.
Is it early or from what period? Ceramic classical, late classic.
It's late classic, I think. I have to check, but actually we have. But I'm not sure if it's in that it's written as yo and at.
Yeah, that will be the same. Yeah, it's also your part.
Yeah, okay, yes. So actually
could be, also part of his.
I think it's earlier, but I have to check. But that would be cool, yeah. So thank you very much.
Yes. You're welcome. Yes, and yes, our colleague from Nizhny Novgorod, Irina Demicheva, also says that thank you very much, very interesting.
Thank you very much.
Еще вопросы, комментарии? какие-то, да, или все у нас стало понятно? Okay, so if we don't have any questions, let's say thanks a lot again to Dora. Very interesting, and for us in your perspective, well, we know a lot of this stuff when we were in Guatemala, but still it's good to have such a nice overview and with all different elements and from the perspective from middle formative and late formative and Teotihuacan also very interesting to understand how Teotihuacan was there. And I don't remember exactly this. I never heard. Probably it's just recently not published about the analysis of tooth enamel.
Yeah, it's published already. But yeah, it was published 1 year ago, like 2020. But it's quite new analysis. It's an article about diet and analysis of the bones and teeth as well. The first author is Asta Ruth, so but I can share the article with you. But of course, it's published in academia.
Great. So thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Так, тогда мы останавливаем запись.